The whole session today was on trade uncertainty, and there's everything that farmers are thinking about right now. There is a trade issue that's connected to it.
Yeah, the trade issues are kind of all encompassing throughout all the different facets from, the input side. We have import tariffs on some of those products, whether that's some of our crop protection products, some of the fertilizers that we import, and things like aluminum and steel, and some of those things that go into parts for our machinery or the machinery that we produce. And so, thinking about that side of things, and then also we have the uncertainty of what that means and implications for exporting the crops that we're producing or the agricultural products that we're producing.
How do we solve this, and when are we going to solve this?
Well, if I knew that, yeah, I mean, I think that it's going to take more than one thing. There's not a single solution. One of the things that we are very heavily focused on is the demand side, because we know that when there is market-driven demand for our corn and other ag products, that supports market price. And ultimately, farmers want a market for the products that they are so skilled and have competitive advantage in producing. And so, how do we do that? Today we were very focused on the trade side of things, and so that's talking about working with our trade partners, existing trade partners, new trade partners, and not we were hearing a lot about tariffs right now, but ultimately what we need is trade deals that deal with some of the non-tariff barriers that are out there. For example, there's things like phytosanitary limitations and biotechnology regulations, and there's a whole bunch of different things that keep our corn and ethanol and DDGs and other ag products from being able to penetrate a market that has a lot of potential. So that's one side of things. And then domestically, we've been advocating hard for E15. And looking at that as a first step to increasing biofuels demand and demand for our corn, but across other commodities too, thinking about how can we improve domestic demand. So that's one piece of it that I think can really help.
You've mentioned non-trade barriers, and that's something that the trade representative from the prior administration really focused everything that she was doing on it, and apparently there was a lot done, but nobody really ever said much about it to claim what successes she had.
Yeah, honestly, I can't speak to that much.
Okay, all right, that's fine. When we look at corn, I mean, we're exporting a lot of corn. Are there some of those countries that are getting some retaliatory tariffs on there? Where is corn being held back in some places, at least some of our sales?
Yeah, so we just finished a marketing year with record corn exports in terms of volume. And right now, the only nation that's put a retaliatory tariff on corn has been China. And we weren't exporting a lot of corn to China beforehand. So that really hasn't had a direct impact. There's indirect impacts of some of the retaliatory tariffs on soybeans and some other crops that I think you could make the case that there's some flow-through impacts, but just as specifically on corn exports, we've still been able to export a lot, and next year we're looking at even topping that record and setting a new volume level. But one of the things I pointed out today was that from a value perspective, when we look at our exports in terms of billions of dollars, the projection for next year is not as high as last year, and it's not as high as some past years. And especially when you adjust past year's value for inflation, there's been several past years that have had higher. And so one of the points that I wanted to make is, increasing our export market access for exports is still really important for corn, even though we are at this record volume, because we want to, improve that value and make sure that farmers are seeing the value back to the farm.
Because what USDA is looking at is just a shade under 3 billion bushels for this next year.
Yeah.
But with corn at under $4, that
Well, and that's
Total
part of, I mean, the low corn price is part of why we're competitive in the global market. That's part of what is fueling all those exports. So from that perspective, again, that volume of exports is really positive, but how do we achieve that volume, but at a higher value as well?
You've National Corn Growers Association really has put out a lot of good reports lately. One of them, at least based on a survey of farmers,
Yeah.
they think that we're in kind of sad shape as far as the farm economy right now.
Yeah, so one of the problems with evaluating some of the statistics that are out there, the data that we can get from USDA, data on farm bankruptcies, there's a bunch of different data that we can get, but it's sort of a lagging indicator. Like, it's looking backwards. And so we wanted to do this survey of farmers to get this robust, selection of farmers to tell us what they're really feeling. What is the feeling from the farm level? And almost 80% said that we are or on the brink of a farm crisis. About half of them were very concerned about the farm economy. 2/3 of the farmers who responded to this survey, again, over 1,000 corn growers from across the country, 2/3 told us they're more concerned about their farm financials today as compared to a year ago. And importantly, only 4% said they were less concerned. So there was another third that was about the same, which I think is really telling. The whole survey really told us a lot about what farmers are feeling, and I think that's sort of the alarm telling us it's giving us that insight into what's happening at the farm level that we can't get from the data necessarily. That's more backward looking.
We've got some transportation issues that really could challenge things a lot more.
Yeah.
Whether it's in funding for rivers, whether it's in port fees charged on ships that are coming in,
Yeah.
that's a headache as well.
Yeah, there's quite a few different transportation issues. So, you mentioned, first of all, we can talk about river infrastructure. And some of the locks and dams we've fortunately seen some work to improve some of those. But then on top of that, coincidentally, we're headed into the fall season again, harvest season, for the fourth year in a row, having low water levels on parts of the Mississippi, which sort of that makes it reduces the barge tow rates, and so the barges have to be loaded less and to get through those parts of the river. And so that's another infrastructure sort of problem that's caused by just the weather, not out of our control.
It's Mother Nature.
Yeah,
we can't do much about that.
And then the railways, there's some congestion because we're exporting a lot of corn and other grains down to Mexico. There's been some congestion last fall, and with the projection to export even more to Mexico this year, concern for what the railways might look like. And then up in the Northwest, we have a different issue where because there's not that demand from China out of the Pacific Northwest ports, there's not the demand to keep the rails running between North Dakota and the Pacific Northwest ports. And so that is problematic. And then you mentioned, too, the port fees. And that's a little bit of what the impact of that is going to be is left to be seen, because those go into effect here mid-month of October. And while the initial set of rules that came out for that, the initial proposed rule was very concerning for our exports, but then there was a revision that we think that a large number of our bulk commodity exports won't be impacted, but it'll still impact our imports, and it's sort of left to be seen what type of impacts that could have, but concerning as we look ahead.
There's just it's almost like farmers had a whole bunch of handful of dust thrown in their eyes, and they're not sure what it all is, but it's really hurting.
A culmination of a number of different things, and also year 3, looking ahead to next year, year 4 of negative farm returns. And what I mean by that is, on average, the cost to produce your crop is more than the cost you can sell it for. And so when you're already that many years in and you have all these other issues coming into play, it's a real challenge.
your president, Kenny Hartman, has spent a lot of time on the airplane going to Washington day in and day out.
Yeah.
And I'm sure Congress probably knows everything by now, but it's hard to tell when they're going to do something about it.
Yeah, well, and certainly as a grassroots organization, getting Kenny and our officer team out there is really important. Getting members out there. We just had a group of people from all a number of different states out in DC 2 weeks ago, and yeah, just trying to continue to share this message.